with you, it's at least something to reflect on. Now, yes, it's illegal for them to discriminate against you on that basis, but discrimination itself is illegal, and people still do it.
Right.
So, I do think that, politically things change, and, the pendulum swings. With Trump, it's swung a long ways that direction. And I think it'll swing back again. And sometimes when you have somebody in power that is really abusive and inappropriate, it may actually accelerate having solutions. I'm not. Nobody knows. We're into kind of philosophical, political things. It's just hard to predict. But I personally think the chances of you being discriminated against because you successfully prosecuted a claim are minimal. Because you make a great impression, you've got a great working record. There's no reason why that wouldn't continue. And I don't think very many potential employers would hold it against you that you once had a claim.
Yeah.
And they might not even check to find out.
Yeah. Ideally, obviously, I wouldn't want that to be able to be found in a background check.
But it is something that would come up, though, if they wanted to do the background check, because it would be a public record.
Right. And, I think if it were to come to the point, I'm not totally savvy on this legal stuff or how it works exactly, but if it did come to the point where there was a settlement without ever taking it to, a court or to trial or whatever,
right.
I think I would be willing for that much more. This isn't really about the money for me.
You need to make it enough money to make it painful for them and to compensate you and get me paid.
Absolutely. Because, they had an incident, I don't know if you heard about it, in Independence not too long ago. I think it was last winter or something, where it was a big thing. Did you see it? Or
it sounds vaguely familiar, but I get, those things. I'm not sure. I don't think of anything specific, but in a vague way, it seems like there was something racial with Applebee's, but I don't remember the detail.
Yeah, they basically what is the word? Racially profiled someone, and then it was this big thing on the news and social media, and they had to shut down the store, and all of this stuff, and it's obvious, and that store is owned by the same man.
So
I think it was last winter. I'm sure you could find it with a quick Google search.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So it's obviously pervasive throughout the company that these things are happening. In Sedalia, at the Sedalia Applebee's, they had an employee write on an Applebee's advertisement that said bigger, bolder combos. They crossed out the B and made it an N, so it said nigger bolder combos. And then that employee wasn't fired. They were employed with the company until they chose to leave. So it's just obvious.
Who was that employee?
Her name is Jessica Steckel.
White woman?
Yeah.
And this is the same franchise owner?
Yeah. And so they clearly, they're punishing me for offending an employee, but they're not. There's other people who are doing horrendous things that aren't being reprimanded at all.
Alexis, listen, you are somebody that, in my opinion, would be loved by a jury. And I think that your case, if it were tried, would have the potential of a very substantial outcome. You can't count on that because it's juries vary, and who you see, it makes an enormous difference, and there's not enough control over who you see. But I think that you would be very well received. I think that the likelihood is that the conduct that we would be able to ultimately develop and show would be egregious enough that, it would just make anybody angry that heard about it. And so I really like your claim. They ought to try to settle with you without it going to the lawsuit stage, but I can tell you that the amount of money you can get in a pre-suit settlement is often not nearly as much as can be obtained in a post-suit settlement. But it varies, and it might be possible. But if you file a lawsuit, there will be a public record of it. And if you have a trial, and it'll make publicity even if you were to have a disappointing outcome. Mm-hmm. It would still be, if they awarded you. Any case could be lost, but I'm not seeing your case as one that I would be very likely lost. I think it's just the disappointing outcome could be they just didn't award as much as they should. But again, you're the kind of person that I think a jury would love, and I think that you would stand a chance of getting a really substantial recovery. And I suppose if it's large enough, it kind of offsets some of the other stuff. And the fact of a large recovery, it makes it proves that you were right, so to speak.
Right.
And my best guess is that your employability and your financial future would not be impaired in any way by a claim, and that a substantial claim would help your financial future and your employability, or wouldn't hurt it at least. But that's just a guess, and obviously it depends on personalities and political events and social events. It's a very different world today than it was, when I was in grade school. Brown versus Board of Education was in '59, and so it had just happened. I was born in '49, so I would have been 10. Mm-hmm. Am I remembering my years right there? I think that was the year.
Well, my mom.
Maybe Brown was earlier. Brown maybe more 53. I bet it was 53.
Yeah. My mom went to a segregated school, and she was born in '44. But
44.
Yeah.
I think Brown. I'm embarrassed not to know that. I hadn't really thought about it for a while. But the more I think about it, I think Brown versus Board of Education would have been more like 53 or 54. Yeah. Because when I started school, I can remember in grade school here in Warrensburg that there were African American children in school with me, and I think it probably was because of that. So it was probably 53 or 54. I'm kind of curious now. Let's look it up. Let's stop for a second. All right. We just looked it up. 1954. Yeah. All right. So, things have changed. I think people your age, I've never been around anybody. I just don't even hear racial remarks, where it's just white people around anymore. Sometimes you'd hear some older people say something a little inappropriate. Probably a lot inappropriate, depending on but I just don't even hear that anymore. Yeah. And I don't think. I have my youngest son was born in '90, and to him it's it's not anything to even think about.
Yeah, and I think at Cerner, I think I signed something that said, if I were to sue them, I have to
arbitrate.
Yeah, something like that. So I don't think they're they've covered their.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that too. I'm glad you mentioned that because that's something I ought to ask you about with Applebee's. Do you remember if you signed anything that said that if there was a claim you'd have to arbitrate it?
No, I don't think so. No.
Well, it's increasingly that is an ongoing problem. Like I had a claim against Dollar General a while back, and they had an arbitration clause. And if
I don't even really know what that means,
okay.
Honestly.
Well, okay, what it is, I'll just give you a little history on it. When I started practicing law, you had a right to a jury trial. And there really wasn't much question about it under federal or state law. The Seventh Amendment guarantees you a right to a jury trial on paper. And the Missouri Constitution, same thing. But, and so if you had a clause that you wouldn't have a jury trial, the clause would be not valid. But today, the United States Supreme Court, which has been dominated by conservative judges for quite a while now, has adopted the position that if they get you to sign a document at the time you're being employed or even after